There is a collection of medieval Welsh tales called the Mabinogion, and one of the stories in this collection is called The Dream of the Emperor Maxen. I cannot read this story to you word for word, as that would raise all kinds of copyright concerns, so I will give you my brief summary. It's the story of an emperor. Now, he is described as just being the best emperor of all time, the wisest, the fairest. There was never a better man for the job than this guy, Maxen. And one day, while out for a hunt, he decides to have a little nap. And during the nap, he has a dream, as the name of the story would suggest. In his dream, he leaves Rome and travels across the world to a far-off distant land with vast plains and with great mountains. And in the land, he sees a castle, a very rich castle, with a golden roof and with walls adorned with glittering precious gems. And there he sees a woman, the fairest maiden he's ever laid his eyes upon. She's so beautiful that when he wakes up, he is obsessed. He can't do anything but think about this woman. So much so that his job, his duty as emperor begins to suffer. Now his friends, his allies, his confidants, well-wishers, they begin to notice the change in old Maxen. And they say, Maxen, you gotta do something about this, mate. Why don't you send some messengers to follow the path that you took in your dream, to find the land that you dreamt of, and to find this woman? Because frankly, the people are starting to talk. And so he does. Maxen sends some messengers to follow the path that he took in his dream, and after years of searching the known world, they finally find it. The land that Maxen dreamt of. It's called Eryri in Welsh. In English, it's known as Snowdonia, found in North Wales on the island of Britain, the province of Britannia, as the Romans would have called it. Once there, they keep going until they find Arvan, and there they see it, the castle that Maxen dreamt of, and more importantly, the fair maiden. When he finally gets word of this, Maxen does what any love-struck Roman emperor would do. He raises an army, travels across the world, invades Britain, and conquers the island by force, before, popping over to see the woman he's been dreaming about. Her name is Ellen, and she is as beautiful as he dreamt. When he finally lays his eyes upon her, he proclaims that she is the Empress of Rome and throws his arms around her, and that very same night she becomes his bride. The next day, Ellen speaks to Maxen about what she gets in return. What do I get out of this arrangement, she says. Like a marriage fee or a dowry. And Maxen says, what do you want? And she says, well, you know how when you came over before you came to see me, you conquered the entire island of Britain? I would like that to be given to my father, please. And he says, okay, no problem. And then she says, I would also like 3 castles to be built. One in Arvan, one in Caerleon, and one in Caerphillen. And if there's any Welsh speakers watching, I'm sorry for my pronunciation of these names. Anyway, Maxen says, no problem. That's that. For the love of my life, for the woman of my dreams, this is a small price to pay. So he builds his castles. And then Helen also says, well, between these castles, I will build some roads. Because after all, what British man would build a road, but not for me, Ellen? And so the roads are built between the castles as well. After building the castles and after building the roads, Maxen pretty much just knocks about the country for a couple of years, taking in the sights, basking in the glory of Ellen's beauty, just doing general emperor stuff. Now, this is a serious miscalculation on his part, as according to the story, Rome had a custom at the time where if the emperor leaves the country for more than 7 years, he's basically ousted. He's no longer emperor. And he receives a threatening letter to that effect. Now, if that happened to you or I, we probably would just accept it. You don't read the terms and conditions, you pay the price. But not Maxen. He's not having any of that. So he raises an army and he leaves Britain and he heads over to Rome and he conquers every single country along the way. But the heart of the empire, Rome, it wouldn't be so easy to take. And after 1 year of sieging the city, he's no closer to taking it than he was at the start. Now, lucky for him, Ellen has a couple of brothers, and they have their own armies, and so she sends them over to help him, and together with a couple of Welsh boys on his side, they take Rome without any issue, and they restore Maxen to his rightful place as emperor. Now, to thank them for their help and for their assistance, Maxen basically says, just go forth, conquer whoever you want, do what you please. And so they do. They spend a couple of years just going around, conquering, pillaging, until they get bored. One of them goes back to Wales, and the other one settles in Brittany, in modern-day France. And that's it, basically. That's the story of the dream of the Emperor Maxen. Well, thank you for telling us that story. It's very nice of you. But is any of that real? Is that historical? Did a Roman emperor really dream about Wales? Now, the earliest surviving copy of that story comes from a 13th century Welsh manuscript, but it's talking about a Roman emperor in Britain. And we know that Rome left Britain in the year 410. So already the story is remembering events that happened hundreds of years before it was written down. Now, a couple of decades before Rome left Britain, the senior Roman general in Britain was a man named Magnus Maximus. And in the year 383, his men, unhappy with the way things were going in the West, basically said, Maximus, we like you. You're our guy. We want you to be emperor. There was a slight problem with that in that there was already an emperor in the West, a man named Gratian. Now, in the Roman world, it's not quite as simple as just pointing your finger at a guy and saying, that's the guy. And so if Maximus actually wants the job, it means facing Gratian head on. And that's exactly what he did. He raised an army by taking a large portion of the Roman military garrison in Britain, left, went over to Gaul, killed Gratian, and became emperor in the West. Now, it's worth noting that in doing this, he significantly weakened the Roman military presence in Britain, and this is often seen as being like the start of the decline of Roman Britain. Anyway, now if you compare the actions of Magnus Maximus to the actions of Maxen in the story, they do start to align. It does start to sound pretty similar. In the story, you have a powerful Roman figure named Maxen. He's already an emperor, but he loses that title. And so he raises an army from Britain, leaves, and goes to reclaim his place as emperor. And in reality, you have a powerful Roman figure named Maximus who gets proclaimed emperor, but has to fight for it. So he raises an army, leaves Britain, and goes to claim his place as emperor. It's the same broad strokes. And that's not just me saying that. It is widely agreed upon the story of Maxen is based upon Magnus Maximus. There are other details too. In the story, Ellen asks for castles to be built in Arfon, in Caerleon, and in Caerphillen. And sure enough, there are still Roman forts, the ruins of Roman forts, that you can visit in these towns today. This is the Roman amphitheatre in Caerleon, or Isca Augusta, as it was known to the Romans. Caerleon was one of the most important Roman legionary forts in Britain, with the others being York and Chester. There are actually some nearby barracks as well. These are the remains of the nearby barracks. So clearly the writers of the story understood and they remembered that these places were built by the Romans who had long since left. Now, these would have not have been built for Ellen. They actually predate Maximus by a few hundred years. But again, it's all loosely aligning with real history. There are also the roads in the story that Ellen had built between these forts. And sure enough, to this day, there are still Roman roads you can walk along between these forts. Some of them are actually still the Roman roads. Some have had, modern day roads built over them, but they still exist. Not only that, but in the story as well, it mentions that one of Ellen's brothers settled in Brittany in modern day France. And sure enough, the language traditionally spoken by the people of Brittany is called Breton. It's closely related to Cornish and Welsh, and all of them descended from an older Celtic language. And so the story seems to be remembering some sort of migration of people with a shared history to this area of France. So why the dream? Why add the marrying of Ellen? Why add any of that stuff? Well, after Rome left, there would have been a power vacuum in Britain. And how might an enterprising wannabe ruler legitimize their claim to that power? Well, they might say, do you remember the Romans? Do you remember those guys? Do you remember that? What was his name? Maximus. That guy, he was the best guy. There was just no one like him. Well, he was actually, you won't believe this, but he was actually my great-great-great-great-grandfather. And so all of this, just by birthright, should be mine. That is my stupid way of saying it was propaganda. The dream, marrying Ellen, all of that stuff is not just good storytelling, it's propaganda. And sure enough, by the early medieval period, Welsh kings were claiming descent from Maximus. There is a monument in North Wales called the Pillar of Elesig. It was erected in the 9th century in the then Kingdom of Powys. And on it, they basically boast about how awesome they are and how Maximus was like their great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. So changing history, turning Maximus into Maxen, making his arrival be the result of some kind of dream prophecy, having him marry into Britain. These are all things that help to support that idea, to help to legitimize that claim. So to answer my original question, did a Roman emperor really dream about Wales? The answer seems to be no. There's no evidence to back that up. There doesn't really appear to be any evidence to suggest that he married into Britain beyond these biased, politically convenient genealogies the early medieval Welsh kings put together. But that doesn't mean it's completely false, and that doesn't mean it's all made up, because clearly it is remembering the broad strokes of real history, and it's kind of, it's changing it to serve a purpose. The writers are trying to claim some of that history for themselves. Anyway, I just thought that was cool. I thought it was interesting. If you're still watching, maybe you thought it was interesting too. And if you're still watching but you didn't think it was interesting, then I'm sorry. I apologize. And also, I just find it cool that like 20 minutes down the road there's a Roman amphitheater by me. I know it's not the Colosseum. I know, I'm sure there are other places where they got bigger Roman stuff, but it's just in the middle of some houses. It's in a housing estate. You can just walk there. It's like 20 minutes down the road. I just thought that's really cool, and it's just like a reminder that there's all history all around you. You just go for a walk and find an amphitheater or a castle. So yeah, just like go for a walk or something, because there's probably some crazy history just down the road. You could just go see, and then you could just read books about it and just learn stuff. And that's just crazy. Anyway, bye. Also subscribe. Thank you. Bye.